All right, guys, welcome back to the Salt&Light podcast, the premier podcast on all listening platforms.
Yeah.
And I've been gone for a little bit, but it's good to be back. Good to see you guys this morning.
Yeah. Would you guys say we're the number one Christian podcast in Southern Maine?
In Southern Maine?
Yeah. Isaac, can you confirm?
I think we'll,
Isaac will get
I'm
back
just going to
to
say
us.
yes.
Yeah, probably.
If there's
just
another
have to-
podcast out there, let's have a podcast battle
that's
and
right.
see who's better.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
So speaking of battle,
Yeah.
we were having a little bit of a discussion.
Nice.
Have you guys ever been in a fight?
It depends on...
Not a wrestling match where it was
Right.
orchestrated.
Right.
Yes, I have.
You have?
Yep.
When was that?
Like a spontaneous fight, or was it planned?
Spontaneous.
Was that when you got angry at Keenan the other day?
Yeah, Keenan and I've, slugged it out a little bit. No, they were both when I was young, kid. One was in maybe the 5th grade, and then one was in, I was a sophomore in high school.
And why did they take place?
So Jordan doesn't like these stories.
Yeah.
The first one was a kid that I'll say I was really lucky, especially for being an overweight kid. I never really get picked on, almost ever. I was I had a very good high school and kid experience. But there was one time when I was in 5th grade, a kid was giving me a hard time or whatever, and he spit on me.
Ooh.
And so I chased him, and he tripped eventually. I probably couldn't have caught him regardless, but he tripped, and I grabbed him and kind of threw him up against the wall and pummeled him for a second, and then got in trouble. The teacher was right there. It was at recess. And then
how old were you there?
5th grade.
5th grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the only other time I think was we were I grew up near a small ski mountain, kind of like Shawnee Peak or whatever. And me and my friends would always go snowboarding there, and we'd hang out there. We'd go there after school, and we'd be there
Monday Night Madness ever?
Yeah, I mean, it was all night skiing and stuff, so
was
we
my
were there
go-to.
all the time. And so we would be there, but then a group of kids from the town over that were sports rivals and stuff would
Yeah.
come a
The
lot.
Sandlot or something.
And that's what happened. It was and so my friend was the one, he was kind of provoking,
No.
heavily provoking with them.
Nice.
And he got into a fight, but then some of the other kids' friends jumped in. And so then I jumped in to help my friend.
Nice. Otherwise, how could you have lived with yourself?
That's right. So
Yeah.
it was a bit of a
It's a bro code.
little
thing.
brawl. Yeah.
Wow.
Didn't last super long. Nobody really got
And
hurt.
that was 10th grade, did you say?
Yeah.
Any since then?
Not a fight.
No.
Some joking around, wrestling that turned probably more heated tempers, but nothing not a real fight.
And how about you, Graham?
More scuffles growing up, kind of like what Jake was talking about with pushing the kid up against the wall. I've had moments like that in middle school and stuff like that. But the one thing that came to my mind was there was this thing called Westbrook Fight Club that was happening in the park for a little bit. Some of the high schoolers would show up, but it was kind of a controlled environment, as controlled as high schoolers could make it. Yeah. And someone brought some boxing headgear and those really lightweight MMA gloves. Mm-hmm. And then people would just put them on, and we'd just go at it with someone who's kind of controlling the environment. And so I showed up. Actually, I thought I was going to a football game with my buddy Will. And he was like, let's go to the football game. I just want to make a quick stop somewhere. And he pulls up to the park. And I was like, Will, where are we right now? He's like, well, there's this little fight club that's going on. I want to check it out. And then, of course, everyone knew I was a wrestler. So they're like, Graham, get in there. Fight Chris, this other kid who was tearing through people. But Chris tried to wrestle me. He tried to take me down.
No,
and that was a mistake.
Yeah,
so I sprawled immediately. Yeah. And then I got on top of him, and then I got the better of
Did you start smacking him when he was down?
I did. It was kind of like an MMA type of setup.
Yeah.
But he was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. And I'm a nice guy. So I didn't have any ill will towards him. So I was just like, all right, you done? Type of moment. And then everyone was like, yeah. But then there was a video of it that was circulating, and the Westbrook police commented on their Facebook post, and they're saying, we've heard there's a fight club that is going on in the park. This is illegal activity. and there could be charges pressed on you if you're there. And so I like couldn't sleep for like the next week because I knew there was like a video of me in that fight circulating. But I think they're just trying to get the kids to cut it out.
Yep.
But boys will be boys. That's what they say. So, but it was fun. It wasn't anything like ill will or hatred. It was just kind of guys getting their testosterone out and seeing who could take who and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Kurt? Did you have any fun fight stories growing up?
Not really. So probably one with my brother.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was like 5th grade.
Brother
He would always
scraps.
pick on me and harass. He wouldn't pick. He'd harass. One time I finally kind of lashed out, hit him in the face, cut my hand on his braces.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom would always tell me, "Don't worry, he'll leave home someday." That was how they were going to handle it for me.
It's like someone miserable at their job, and you're like, "Don't worry, you'll retire." one
Yeah,
day.
something like that. Yeah. And then the only other
great.
time that I got, and I didn't get in a fight, there was kind of a bully instigator guy actually in when I was in track at St. Cloud State University, and I think he was a senior or freshman, and he would kind of bully other freshmen, but he wasn't in a place to be bullying, and so then he did something to me, threw some water or something like that, and I got in his face. That was about as close as I did.
Nice.
I said, "You're not going to do that."
Come on.
It's interesting.
Did he get scared of you a little bit? Did he
No,
receive the intimidation?
he didn't expect someone was going to stand up to him.
Nice.
But it's interesting so tell me if this is the case too, that even though we mature and we don't get involved in those, still we like to watch and analyze, and if not even, we were talking about this, planning on how we would execute if we came to a place, which is fascinating. So my wife we were talking about this, about if you had a dangerous situation in a large crowd, what would you do? And they would say, "Oh, we don't know." We'd cry or something like that. And I started telling her, "Well, no, I would see where the exits were. I'd see, is there like a chair or something I can throw at the person who might have a weapon?"
Right.
All these little plans that you do when you're there, and it doesn't even enter her mind. They wouldn't have never even gotten there.
Yeah.
And so you have that, or how would Jesus lead us through a situation like that?
Yeah.
Because it'd be interesting to all of a sudden get into the spirit when something like that was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's almost like the verse where it says, "Don't worry about what you'll say on that day, but the Spirit inside will give you the words." Like we think, "Oh, if I was ever persecuted, what would I say?" Or the fear that you would not know what to say or renounce. And that's, I think, the spirit. You have to just trust that it's been developed in you, that it'll be a reaction that you don't really have to actively think about. I think I would hope that would be the case if like there was ever a situation with like, your family, you're in a crowd or with your family or whatever, that the Holy Spirit would just lead you into the right decision making, not fueled on adrenaline or testosterone or whatever. But I think that's the thing that runs through my head sometimes is, which I don't like my brain going down that road. And even if other people like Jordan, if she starts to go down that road, I'm like, just stop. But it's like if something were to happen to your kids, like if someone did something to your kids, I think that's like, boy, if I let myself think about it for too long, I'd get like really worked up. Yeah.
I was going down the pacifism PSC trail a while. The guy I was listening to up in Canada, and started looking at some of the I forget who the folks were that kind of got into that more.
Oh, the Anabaptists.
Anabaptist, and there were some others as well. But
Quakers?
Quaker kind of thing, that sort of thing. And it was interesting because as I go down that, and we're told to, well, not murder, I guess would be in the as opposed to kill. But Jesus says, "Here's what you're supposed to do with your enemy." Yeah, and I liked the whole idea And he told a guy actually spoke at our church once, Bruxy KV. I don't know if you remember him.
Yep.
He got in a little trouble later on. But he was telling a story once because he was embracing that kind of way of thinking.
Yeah.
That he was on, I think they were in Toronto, and he saw a woman run by him, just frightened out of her mind. And he wondered what was happening. And all of a sudden he saw, I don't know if it was one. No, it wasn't a woman. It was a guy, frightened out of his mind. And all of a sudden, 4 other guys came by the same thing. And then he chased after them. And rather than engage the other people, he laid on top of the guy that they were going after and just said something to the point where they all just left because he wasn't going to fight them.
In some ways, that's like the smartest thing you could do, though, too, because it's like with the 4 guys, it's probably unlikely that you'd be able to beat them up. But if they don't have anything against you and you're laying on top of the guy,
they got to think of it. This is a strange situation.
Yeah, we don't want to hurt this passerby, this stranger,
unless
unless they're really bad,
right? So,
great,
right? So I liked all that idea of things, but then when it came down to it, because then you kind of go into just war.
Right?
Is there such a thing as that? But then when it comes down to your brass tacks, if there was somebody who broke into my house and was going to go after my family, I would ask for forgiveness and just have to do what I had to do.
Yeah. It's a challenging scenario. I'd say that one of the coolest stories of pacifism, though, of someone who handled it well was the guy from Hacksaw Ridge. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
That's a good movie, yeah.
I forget the guy's name off the
The
top of my
actor?
head.
Yeah.
Well, I know the actor, Andrew
story
Garfield, that
itself,
plays
yeah.
him.
Yeah.
But for those who have never seen the movie, it's actually a pretty, intense, gory movie.
Yeah.
But
I just watched a clip of the end of it last night.
Oh, really? Did you?
Where the
I think
guys
it's on Netflix currently.
The guys wouldn't go up for their second thing until he went with them.
Yeah.
Which is, makes you tear up.
And he went into battle, into the front lines of battle without any weapon against the Japanese, who didn't care if you had a medic sign on. Because usually with a lot of countries, there was kind of a common understanding that you don't shoot medics, but the Japanese didn't really follow the Geneva Convention or classic war law. And so he would go into these battlefields and he pulled out his own wounded men because as a Christian, he felt like it wasn't right for him to take a life. But beyond that, there was one moment where he lost his platoon and he was around Japanese soldiers who were wounded. And he started saving Japanese soldiers and bringing them over to his side as well to try to save their lives. And it was just such a kind of this embodiment of this unconditional love, like whether you're on my side or you're my enemy and you're wearing the other uniform, I'm just going to save as many lives as possible. And I feel like that's the thing. If you're going to go with the pacifist route, you have to commit to it 100% and just go for it like that guy did. But I think the reality is most of us who have families and, things like that, I think there's a middle ground that you can kind of adopt where there are certain circumstances where you have to defend yourself. But I think the reality is 90 to 95% of the time, you can diffuse situations, and you should diffuse situations. I think a lot of guys get a little bit too macho and they're like, well, if someone came up to me and they spit on me, I would slap them in the face and then I'd sideswipe their legs or something like that. It's like, well, probably you wouldn't, first of all. And really the best thing you should do logically and Christian wise in that situation is to diffuse that situation and be like, bro, what's going on? Calm down, back up. I need you to just back up from me. I'm going to call the cops on you. But if the person's going and trying to throw haymakers at you, I think in that situation, I don't necessarily think it's un-Christ-like to try to stop them with force.
So if that's what we
That's why
agree,
you should do jujitsu. Jujitsu.
jujitsu,
That's the word. Jujitsu. How do you pronounce that again?
we'll have to have classes here.
Yeah.
If that's the reasonable way to think, and I think we'd all think that way, why is it that you can get, I can't speak for you guys, but I can get charged up in a movie where say we're going against some extremists in some way, and our guys are trapped behind, and the A-10 comes down with its its 30 millimeter cannon and just wipes them out, and I can just get pumped. Why does that happen?
Because we're men.
I think there's an element of desiring justice that might not be, and so the problem is that it's a very razor's edge where are we the one determining what's justice or are we allowing God to determine what's justice? I think if it's extremists, the reason why in maybe that scenario it's easy is because especially with the movie portraying, there's a very definitive evil side and a very definitive like good side. So when justice is brought down on the evil, there's something satisfactory. And the problem is, I think, is that we like to sometimes invoke our own justice, or we want justice when there's really not a clear, I'd say in real life, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, justice is a lot more gray because who's at fault is a lot more gray. Even in the case of war, you think of like, are there people who were outright malicious and evil in wartime scenario? Of course, but there's a lot of innocent people that were either drafted, forced to fight, had no real idea what they're doing. They're just like defending their home and their family. And it's like there were probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who had to fight other people who were just the same as them, just doing the same thing on the opposite side. And it's like, that's not justice. It's not justice because it was the United States against whoever. That's just like a tragedy in general. But I think when it's clearly depicted, it's easy to get like, yes, justice was
especially when it's in the context of like a video game or a movie or something like that, where it seems more glorified and it's built up to, and there's cool music in the background. But I'm sure in real life there's a feeling of success after a battle if you win, and feeling like some euphoric feelings potentially. But I'm sure there's also a lot of feelings of like, whoa, there's a gravity of what you just did probably. That's like, we just took the lives of other people. And I'm sure that starts to sink itself in over time. And you hear that from soldiers where they're like, I saw this one YouTube video of this World War II veteran talking about still seeing some of the faces and the screams of the people that he took the lives of.
Yeah, that's
and
brutal.
He's like, to this day, when I go to sleep at night, I can still sometimes see their faces or hear the screams. And you're just like, see, that's the side that the movies don't always portray. And that's the gruesome reality of the fallen, sinful world that we live in, where there is violence and war. And it's very far from God's intended design for humanity.
Right. That's why a lot of those guys don't like to talk about it. Because it's...
Yeah.
They especially don't want to talk about it with kind of a bravado sense.
Yeah, that's especially more of like the old school mentality. My great uncle Ray was a Navy corpsman in World War II, and the Army kind of brought him in because they needed more medics. And he was actually, at one point, his platoon was completely surrounded by the Germans, and they were cut off from their team. And Sherman and their tanks, General Sherman, came in and saved
Sherman
the guys.
Was in the Civil War, wasn't
Was it Sherman? Was it who? No, what's the guy's name?
Sure, there's a Sherman tank.
No, is it Patton? Patton. Yeah, that Sherman tank. That's what I was thinking. Patton came in. But this is crazy though. He actually had the opportunity of liberating a Holocaust camp and saw like some of that stuff.
Did he talk about that?
He had pictures and stuff, but my papa said he never talked about it. He would never want to talk about it. And my papa said that he was just like kind of traumatized after the war. He was always really quiet and jumpy and nervous afterwards because he just saw so much carnage in the war. But he said, I think one thing he said is there was just bodies stacked up like piles of wood. Yeah. And he said it was just like so hard to take in, you know?
Yeah. No, my uncle, my dad's brother, was in the Vietnam War. And my dad told us, like, whenever we'd go to, when we were little, he was like a little easier about it as we got older. because we had more awareness, but he would always tell us not to talk about, like not ask questions about it.
Right.
Because he was like really traumatized from it. And one thing that I found really interesting was, and sad, but he had a severe fear of frogs afterwards because it was all trauma related, because when he was in like deployed,
Yeah.
there was times where they would have to they'd be in like these like really bog swampy areas and like surrounded by frogs, and then like they were in the middle of war, so it's all like the trauma happening, and he associated it with the frogs. And so then like there's like killing and there's bodies and blood everywhere, and all he'd like hear is like these frogs. And it would like really mess with his head.
Right.
And so as an adult, years and years and years later, like frogs would terrify him. And I was like, oh, what a strange, like that's weird how trauma
does
works
that to
like
people
that.
though, right? Where it's like certain scents or colors or sounds associated to a traumatic event.
Yeah.
If you experience those later, it's like Pavlov's dog, but in like a negative way.
Yep.
You kind of hear that bell, so to speak,
Yeah.
and then you feel
or if
that
you eat
response.
a certain food and get sick, even though if it wasn't a food, that taste like kind of is ruined forever type of thing.
Right, right.
So this might be getting out of our lane a little bit.
Yeah. We're starting to sound like therapists.
But well, that's the thing. So we're all of us are engaged in freedom prayer here, and we've experienced people who've had different kinds of trauma. The trauma we're talking about here is just so intense, especially because you executed on somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of did that. Do you feel like the same pattern we take to see people freed up? Because also I would have to guess there's a lot of demonization that obviously happens on the battlefield.
Yeah.
That how would we change, or would we keep it the same way we're doing it if we were doing it with folks involved in the kind of trauma you're talking about?
I think we'd keep it the same, and we would just address the lies that those like the demonic hold on to. So like if somebody was in a war situation, had PTSD from that, I would assume the demonic activity that keeps them in bondage would be lies of like how like guilt and shame and terrorize them with that. And so we'd really have to like walk them through accepting the forgiveness that Jesus gives, breaking that lie, and then going after the spirit behind the trauma or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would assume it would be the same.
Yeah.
I'd probably go
It's got to be the power of the Spirit.
right.
So obviously as well, they'd have to be followers of Jesus to receive that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to bring in probably even more like of the hope side of things, in the sense of there are certain types of sins and brokenness as a result of the fallen world that we live in, where you have like natural disasters or war or something along those lines, where the carnage is so bad that it almost feels like it can't be redeemed. And I could sense that a lot of people coming back from a war scenario, especially if it was really bad, where you saw a lot of people die and, terrible things like that, that you'd almost have this sense of despair and hopelessness afterwards. And I think for that person, being reminded of the truth of the Bible, that, when you look at the Old Testament and you look all throughout Scripture, there's terrible things that happen to so many different people, but the Bible is a story of humanity's redemption, and we need that. We need that hope, and we need to be reminded that in the end, God is going to make everything right. And I think when we believe that, not just on an intellectual level, but when the Holy Spirit really like brings that into us into our heart on a deeper level, you start to kind of let go of some of the pain of the past, knowing that God's in control and he will like restore and redeem all things. Even when Satan just makes a muck of things here and now, and people are a part of that in the process, that God will restore everything. And that's not the only healing answer to a person who's gone through that kind of hurt and that kind of trauma, but I feel like that's like a pivotal part of it. What do you think, Kurt?
Yeah, I know. I think we always underestimate the power of the Spirit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so part of that being what's the word? Effective, I guess, is how do we pass that along? But again, we can't even pass on that appreciation. Just like Paul prays, I pray that you would have power to know the love of God in Ephesians 3. That he would have to do something in them to do that, and so again, what we do during those times is what we say to people is we're just here to facilitate you and Jesus getting together, and so I think that's the only thing that could help in that situation.
I think sometimes when people go through trauma as well and they feel like they have PTSD, I think some people adopt this mentality and this narrative that their brain is like inherently broken after that. And I think sometimes in our like over psychological world where we kind of diagnose everybody and you listen to a podcast and now you're like, oh, I have OCD or I have this or that or the other thing. And it may even be true, but I think sometimes we, with these diagnoses and these understandings of, oh, my brain must be broken in some fundamental way, I think people can adopt that and almost like take on a curse from it. And it becomes a self-promoting like negative prophecy that fuels itself, where you're like, God can work on me, but only this far because my brain's fundamentally messed up or something along those lines. And I think that limits the power of God in your life because it limits your faith and your belief. And now you're adopting actually a false belief. Because the reality is, even if there is like neurological damage done to somebody because of trauma or something like that, God can still heal that. He can still redeem that. And he can still renew your mind in whatever way he wants to, reprogram you, I guess, if you want to put it that way.
So this will sound kind of arrogant, but I just, because I working through this, even hearing what we're saying now, and what all the way back to where I hear people talk about these dry periods that they're just not, and you'll talk and it'll be, well, I haven't picked up my Bible for weeks or something like that, and you don't know what instigated all of that. But it seems like in all of whatever the bad situation might be, right? Because we have war, we have a lot of other things. We have trauma that happens to people. We've dealt with that in these times as well. Things that people either perpetrated on somebody else and they had no deal in it. And we know that the demonic sometimes can kind of hook on to something that's done to you. But the idea, so we use the word abiding, but I'll say a continuing friendship / sonship with God, because Jesus says, in me you'll have peace, in this world you'll have trouble. So that's almost like we have a choice,
right?
Because if we're not in him, we're going to be the same trouble that the world's having. That if we can maintain that, we'll have some ups and downs, but we'll be able to get through it and out of the situation way better than if we weren't in this continual friendship, sonship with him. And I don't know how to, this comes back to the other question, how do we encourage one another to be in that place all the time and to experience the depths of that so we can be effective in helping other people out of their situations as well.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yep. Jesus is the antidote for sure.
Yeah, I think it was a couple weeks ago, we talked a little bit about, like, you had posed a question about when Jesus commanded, like, somebody to be healed, how sometimes it said it left them, sometimes it said they were healed, and how that might be. So we know Jesus had authority over spirits, but what's been really, like, just, like, blowing my mind a little bit is we talked about, and it's a well duh moment, but Jesus' authority is over all things, over all of creation. So he has authority over spirits, and he's given that to us in his name and in his power. But he says the same things to the disciples about creation. So literally there is no cap to it. So when he says, like, if you say to this mountain, move, that stuff, it'll go into the sea. When he curses the fig tree, all those things weren't even spirits. Those are just like creation. So really, even with we have to come to a place of understanding there is nothing outside of his grasp. There's nothing outside of his ability. When we kind of like, I think what we do is more of a, our brain is limited to like what we've seen and experienced. And then we slowly make that a little bit bigger. And that's about the extent of it. Like, so say what I thought was possible before being involved in deliverance ministry might have been like, say, this big. And I'm not like, my faith hasn't been blown open to where I believe it intellectually, but I don't have the faith that anything's possible.
Yeah.
But maybe it's like, now it's this big because I've seen, and I think that's part of like the spending time with him is so important, and you can't bank it. It's not like 2 hours on Tuesday and then ignoring him for the next 4 days.
What? You can't do that?
Is good enough. No, because it's like,
I thought it was like eating a meal.
That's not a relationship.
It's not a relationship, and it's this, you have to keep saturating to experience more, so it almost opens your capacity.
Yeah, I can't. More and more as we do that, because as you talk about the power over the universe that he has, I have no doubt he will orchestrate and oversee the 2 to 3 hour situation we're in with that individual. But I can't give enough warnings and encouragement to the people as they get out of that. You must get to know him and walk with him. Otherwise, you just don't know what. And I can't promise you what will happen, but I can promise you peace and hope if you develop that relationship. And that's the question too. When you talk about banking something, that makes him out to be not a person, but some sort of a force.
Right.
And we have to get the mindset away from that and say, no, this is a person with a personality who wants to engage you, and he created the universe and continues to do so.
It's almost too good to be true.
So much so, to your point, so much so that I have started to believe that, because we know that in the freedom sessions, that when it's seemingly, and we don't know someone's heart, we can't see someone's heart completely, but when it seemingly is that they're not really interested in that relationship, they just want the problems to go away, it makes it infinitely harder for us. It's so difficult to make the spirits leave. And I almost wonder, is that a grace that Jesus has where he's like, I know their heart and they're not going to come after me, they're not going to pursue me, and if I were to allow you to free them of these spirits, then it's the Matthew thing of them coming right back. And so you wonder, is it even God not allowing there to be freedom because he knows without him, it's just setting them up for disaster, which is a strange dynamic,
It is.
But to that, isn't it interesting how so many people in like even the world today in like self-help or different types of avenues kind of like rob the things of God, but then don't give him the credit for it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like financial wisdom type of stuff, or I don't know what else might be an example, like relationship advice or things. And they're like, you need to forgive your partner. You need to do this or XYZ thing or the other. You need to serve them and put their needs above yours. And you're like, this is sounding very biblical. But then they're like, yeah, so if you want to read my book, this is all in my book. And it's like the person's not overtly a Christian. They're not trying to point people to Jesus. But the interesting thing is those things still do work. And we even see that in like the AA community, where in AA, they kind of secularize a lot of what scripture points out of how to kind of overcome strongholds in sin, like surrendering yourself to a higher power, as they call it, making an inventory of yourself. A lot of like what we do in freedom is kind of ripped off in AA as well, of forgiving people, writing out your fears. What's God's solution to those things? But the funny thing is, like, even God, he'll use those cracks in the door to come into people's lives. And so we see that a lot here at East Point, where people are like, you know, I've been opening myself up more to God, and I went through the 12 steps, and I feel like God's calling me to get engaged in a church. And now that I'm here, I'm realizing like everything that I did in those 12 steps and following the big book there, like Jesus talks about that. Like Jesus talks about it first. And I'm like, yeah, that's where they got it from, you know? And the analogy I almost give to them is it's like almost like this hooded figure pulls you out of quicksand. And then the hooded figure, like when you go like, who are you? Thanks for saving me. The hooded figure they take off their hood and they turn around and you see it's Jesus that saved you from that quicksand. And that's the experience that a lot of people have as they experience God's goodness, but they don't know his name yet.
Yep.
You know, so God even uses that, I guess.
That's true.
He does, and that's on a path toward him. The idea of he keeps giving me this word that he is my completion. That folks who have the good experience and warm fuzzies and all of that from that, but they don't assign it to the personality, don't have completion, because they're just going from day to day. I mean, which is the essence of the whole thing, right? Every day, I'm gonna lay myself down.
Right.
With Jesus, we get to shoot well beyond our current day and know that he's going to pull me through all of these as I have this relationship with him.
Yep.
Yeah, it's so much better.
Yeah. I have a question that somebody asked me yesterday that I wanted to ask you guys, because I answered it as best I could, but I was curious to hear from you. So I was having a conversation with somebody that had a ton of questions around spiritual warfare and like the demonic and stuff. And one question towards the end was, is the demonic able to know the future? Because there was a friend of hers that had, the friend's mom had gone and seen like a medium or psychic or whatever that had used tarot cards and stuff and had predicted the year she would get married, the name of the person she'd marry, and then the names and dates of her children that she had.
That's pretty specific.
Yes, which you don't normally see a lot of the
people are
specific
charlatans
stuff
when they do that stuff.
Yeah. And all of it came true.
Yeah.
Which then you say, well, did it come true because it was like planted in the head?
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Or was there power there? And I was honest to say, like,
the latter.
I don't know the full answer, but we do know that there's like prophetic words in Christianity and in Jesus. And is there, like, we know there is a lot of power in the enemy, but I was curious what you guys thought.
Yeah. That reminds me, my dad and I were going for a walk in Westbrook. There's this place called the Beauty Covenant. It has like an eye on it, and it's really kind of eerie feeling.
Oh,
and I was
yeah,
like, what do you think
few.
about that? It's kind of weird, right? And we were talking about how like witchcraft and New Age is becoming more popular. And my dad's a classroom teacher now at elementary school. And he said like the kids are interested in that stuff, like mediums and tarot cards and things like that, and astrology. And they were asking Mr. Larry about it one day, and my dad was saying, yeah, you shouldn't mess around with that. And they're like, why? Because it's fake? And my dad was like, no, because there's real power in it. You just don't know what the power source you're tapping into. And I think like that's the reality with a lot of these things. Some people are just charlatans, and they're just like kind of making stuff up, and they're like very general and vague, and anyone could guess, you know, maybe you have one of your 4 grandparents that have passed away and they want to say hi or something like that, you know, and they're kind of good at perceiving the person's response. But then I think, you know, you look at the Witch of Endor in the Bible, it pulls up Samuel's spirit, and it seems that there are demonic entities that do have power. And the Bible doesn't say that you shouldn't consult mediums because they're fake.
Right.
It seems like the reality is, one, it's pulling from a demonic source, and 2, you're trying to control something that is supposed to be given to you by God, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so like, oh, I want to know what the future holds for me. I want to know who my partner is. I want to know how many kids I'll have. I want to know what my next job is. Why do you want to know all that? Because you want certainty. You want control. Why didn't you go to God for those things? Well, God won't tell me. He just says, trust in me.
Yeah.
Well, that's not as fun.
Yeah.
I want to go to the whatever crystal ball or the medium or the tarot cards that'll give me more certainty and power. But also, it almost makes it sound like the demonic are on your side if they try to tell you these things, but you don't know how much of it is true and how much of it's twisted and perverted, and lies are being seeded into those things. And now maybe you're starting to get addicted to them because you feel like, oh, there's maybe something to this. Like, I know of people who they don't want to go on through their day unless they know what their astrology like thing is. You know, and they're like, oh, it's a 2-star day for me, and I wasn't supposed to talk to a lot of people today. I was supposed to be more reserved because my stars are, I don't even know how astrology works, but
You sound like you do.
but I've heard people say things like that, and they're like, oh, I should have read or horoscope. I think that's what I'm talking about. Horoscope. And you just realize, like, oh, it's like a drug that they get addicted to, and they're relying on it to almost like think for them. So anyways, that was a lot of thoughts, but
I feel like the demonic certainly has been present from early creation, obviously.
Yeah.
So they're able to put things together. I mean, I think God's the only one who's
Truly
all
knows the
powerful,
future.
all
Omnipotent.
and omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresence.
Right.
So I don't believe the demonic knows the future, but I think they can piece a lot of things together along with the power of suggestion that ends up happening. But their power is kind of like Graham was saying as well, that it starts to affect you, and then even your brain starts to basically mold itself to what you're hearing, and that's kind of how you want to do it. But I mean, Satan knows his future because it's written down for him right now.
Yeah, there
so
are certain things.
He kind of sees that. But just think if you had lived for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and all you and your pals all communicate with one another, and you saw the way things typically work, and kind of how people will break your password, for instance. You know, you see it in movies. What's his favorite? What's his dog's name? What's his whatever? That they can put a lot of those things together, and come pretty close. Because what people will do is, so say you got your medium or your palm reader or something like that. If they get 20% of it right, now all of a sudden they got it all going on.
Right.
And God gets 100% of it right.
Right. Yep. Yeah. No,
and God,
pretty much right.
in his goodness, doesn't always share it with us or share the whole picture, or else we would be able to like perceive the future. But he, in his goodness, like what Jesus says, like, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worries of its own. But for some reason, we just like, we want to know the future. We want to know all of these things. And in some of that, it's almost kind of like if you cave in and go to a medium, and like, because you want to know who your future husband is or something like that. In a sense, what you're kind of saying in that moment is like, oh, God's not good enough. Like he doesn't have this. I need to take this into my own hands. And like, that's why Saul ends up going to the witch of Endor and pulling up Samuel, is because he's like, I need to know what's next. I need some consultation here. And Samuel is my guy. And it's like, can you not pray? Do you not have access to the Lord of the universe anymore?
That's a super real example of like what we see nowadays, where the faith has been unintentionally placed upon a person or a thing. So Saul's comfort in his faith was in Samuel. Yeah. And for somewhat you can empathize, for decent reason, because Samuel was so close to God. He was like getting the download immediately. So you'd understand why he would really rely on Samuel. But when his faith is placed on Samuel instead of God, it leads him into a place of desperate depravity that leads him into sin. And we see that all the time now, where you know, maybe there's somebody like a really godly person in your life, and it's not wrong to want godly people to pray for you because you know that they have a heart that's, yielded after the Lord and all those things. And so I do the same thing. Like if something's going on in my life or something's health stuff, I ask people that are godly in my life to pray.
Right.
But when your faith is unintentionally on the person and their faith,
right,
it's like secondhand faith.
Yeah.
And so it actually leads you to a really bad place when your faith should be in the Lord. And so you just want to go and be obedient. But we say it all the time. We're like, how many times do we get calls where like, well, we need a pastor to come pray, or we need like, so-and-so to do this. And it's like, well, we have you have access to him the same way that we do. There's no, but we even like allow our minds to go there sometimes. It's just a very interesting dynamic.
Yep.
And we can't, when we talk about anything Old Testament, we can't even compare it to what we have, the living God living in us.
Yeah.
And we don't want to squander that. And even when we talk about faith in God, people, again, look at him as some sort of a thing rather than someone we have a relationship with.
Right.
That you wouldn't even consider going to a medium or anything like this if you were daily walking with him.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It just wouldn't even enter your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is a kind of an Old Testament way of thinking in the sense of like, I need a mediator who's more righteous, more clean than me to get into the presence of God, to kind of convey God's message to me, when now in light of the cross, like we all have the same reality and the same level of righteousness. Like you don't have more righteousness than I do. We have the same amount of righteousness because our righteousness comes from Christ. It doesn't come from us.
Right.
And that's why Hebrews is so clear. It's like, you have one mediator now, and that's Christ. And he ripped that veil in half. And you get to go straight to God boldly because of what he did for you. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Put your faith in Jesus. Don't put your faith in mediums or horoscopes or tarot cards or anything like that, or in the Salt and Light podcast.
That's right.
Because we could be an idol too. Hopefully we're not.
Right.
So cast this idol down, especially Kurt.
Yeah.
But thanks for listening, guys. Good conversation, and we'll see you next time.